Hey guys, today we step into a world of chandeliers that never dim, velvet curtains that never quite settle, and a man whose heart beats to the secret pulse of show tunes. Donald Trump, you know, the gold-plated penthouse, the boardroom bluster, the presidential rallies. But beneath all of that you find an almost childlike awe for Broadway's shimmering marquees. You can see it. The 1980s Manhattan skyline, neon humming through the night, and you wander in his footsteps, wondering how a boy from Queens found solace in the hush before a stage curtain rose. And here's your first reality check. You probably won't survive this story without humming at least one show tune chorus under your breath. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Valuable lessons from the best characters of all time at the end of the story. It will make you stronger in life. And hey, post your location and your local time down in the comments. I love knowing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You move with him into marble-floored lobbies where the soundtrack is never silence, but an endless reel of Broadway cast recordings. Imagine Trump, jacket a bit too stiff, eyes scanning a gilt ceiling, quietly mouthing along to the music of the night. He would never admit it at the microphone, but in the privacy of an elevator ride, his lips tremble with half-remembered lines from Rodgers and Hammerstein. You feel what he feels. The stage is a different kind of power, one not built on real estate or politics, but on a spotlight's warmth. Historians still argue whether his fascination started in his father's austere Queens household, where a radio crackled with Gershwin, or later, after a date night at a revival that left him mesmerized. You picture him sneaking into a theater after a board meeting, jacket draped over one arm, the usher nodding politely as the future mogul takes a seat in the balcony, scribbling notes on stage design rather than balance sheets. The 1980s in Manhattan. Limos jammed at curbs, paparazzi flashbulbs bouncing off mirrors, and Trump's ear attuned not to the clang of trading floors, but to the rise and fall of musical crescendos. You feel the contradiction. He plays the tycoon by day, but by night he studies how Les Miserables makes an audience weep on cue. Would you, in his shoes, prefer applause over quarterly earnings? There's a peculiar comedy, too. He might host a lavish party at Trump Tower, the champagne towers trembling, and then excuse himself not for a deal, but to adjust the lighting in the ballroom, muttering about needing a warmer spotlight, just like they do on Broadway. Guests chuckle, but you recognize the tell. He is staging life itself. One mainstream fact frames this fascination. Trump owned the Plaza Hotel in the early 1990s, where Broadway performers often mingled for charity galas. Standing there, you sense him absorbing every detail, the way a curtain call ignites a crowd, how a simple key change rewires mood. And you can almost whisper to yourself, if you were him, would you dare step on stage? How heavy would that spotlight feel on your shoulders? Think of his campaign rallies decades later, the swelling music, the carefully timed entrances. You see now how it all germinated here, in the quiet obsession with marquees. When he asked aides to adjust sound checks for the exact oomph he once admired in Cats, they rolled their eyes. But you nod, knowing the secret history. Trump always measured success in applause as much as dollars. So, as you drift through that neon-lit Manhattan, you hear his hidden playlist. Frank Sinatra's swagger, the soaring optimism of Oklahoma, the velvet melancholy of Phantom. And in that moment, you realize you are humming too, pulled into the same dream of orchestrated glory. You slip from the velvet balconies of Broadway into the cavernous showrooms of Atlantic City, where sequins glitter under artificial suns and spotlights sweep across rows of expectant faces. Donald Trump's fascination doesn't stay locked in the balcony anymore. It migrates here, into casinos that he molds not just as businesses, but as theaters. And you notice how he choreographs the entire spectacle. Chandeliers timed with crescendos, stages stretched to amplify silhouettes, and even the pause between announcements calculated like the rests in a musical score. You imagine yourself in his shoes, walking across the plush carpet of the Trump Taj Mahal, knowing that every guest's gaze is a kind of audience. How would you hold yourself? Would you stumble? Or would you take the lesson from Broadway and step onto the floor as if it were a stage? That's what he does, each stride rehearsed, each gesture meant to echo across the walls like a lingering overture. Historians still argue whether his Atlantic City ventures were doomed by economic tides or by a restless obsession with spectacle over balance sheets. But when you stand in the wings of one of those showrooms, you realize he's not running numbers, he's running cues, like a director checking spotlights before curtain rise. There's comedy here too. Imagine the casino electricians rolling their eyes as Trump insists that the house lights should come down like in Phantom. One technician jokes, "Boss, this isn't Broadway," but he waves his hand muttering, "Make it Broadway." You laugh quietly, because you know the truth. Trump's boardroom demeanor is inseparable from stagecraft. Pageantry becomes his secret laboratory. The Miss Universe and Miss USA pageants under his ownership transform into stage plays with tiaras instead of swords, gowns instead of costumes. You picture him poring over run-of-show notes, fussing about camera angles, rehearsing how the host should pause just long enough before announcing the winner. You wonder, if you were him, would you spend more time on the balance sheet or on the lighting gels that decide how a diamond crown sparkles on live television? And then there's The Apprentice. On the surface, it's reality TV, but look again, it's a musical without music, a Broadway audition repackaged for prime time. Every contestant enters like a character. Every boardroom verdict lands like a drumbeat. And Trump himself becomes both lead actor and director. He times his "you're fired" like a curtain drop, a final line that lands on cue and leaves silence in its wake. You feel the thrill he must feel, knowing that millions are watching, hanging on the timing of a phrase. What would you do with that kind of orchestration power? Would you tighten your grip, or would you savor the spotlight for as long as possible? One mainstream fact anchors all this. The Apprentice premiered in 2004 and became NBC's top show, pulling in more than 20 million viewers in its early seasons. That's not a business statistic. It's a Broadway-scale audience tuning in every week, a packed theater multiplied 1,000-fold. And Trump plays to them with the same rhythm he once studied in Manhattan marquees. But the spectacle is fragile. Back in Atlantic City, debts pile like discarded props. The lights on the marquees still burn bright, but behind them, accountants wring their hands. Historians still debate, was it hubris or an artist's impulse to keep the show alive no matter the cost? You walk those empty halls today, and you hear the echoes, not of slot machines, but of applause that once seemed endless. And yet the pageantry lingers. Even in failure, Trump clings to the ritual of stagecraft. A bankruptcy filing feels to him less like defeat and more like a rewrite of Act Two. Would you, standing at that crossroads, fold up the set and walk away? Or would you rebuild, convinced that the show must go on? The apprentices, the pageant queens, the casino guests, they are not merely participants. They are cast members in a sprawling, decades-long performance. You see now how Trump never abandoned Broadway's spell. He just rewrote it in marble, neon, and television glow. And as you trail him through these gilded spaces, you notice how he hums again, almost unconsciously, snatches of tunes, refrains of victory, choruses of longing. Maybe it's Sinatra again, or maybe it's the echo of a show tune no one else remembers. But you hear it and you realize This is not business. It is theater by another name. The crowd swells, flags ripple, and music blares, not the subtle overtures of Broadway anymore, but thunderous playlists echoing across open-air arenas. You find yourself at one of Donald Trump's rallies, and suddenly the resemblance is unmistakable. It feels less like politics and more like a traveling roadshow. The stage is portable, the lights harsher than any casino showroom, and the audience, tens of thousands strong, is every bit as eager for spectacle as theater-goers waiting for a curtain rise. You see him pause at the entrance, savoring the moment the way an actor waits in the wings. He steps forward, bathed in the spotlight, and you sense what he senses. The timing must be perfect. Would you, in his place, risk entering too soon, losing the swell of applause? Or would you wait, counting heartbeats until the crescendo hits, stepping out at the exact second the music peaks? That's the performer's instinct he carries from Broadway into politics. Historians still argue whether his rallies are political necessity or pure showmanship. But you stand here in the bleachers and you feel the truth. They are both. Each playlist choice, from "You Can't Always Get What You Want" to "Tiny Dancer," is a wink to the audience, a hidden soundtrack guiding the crowd's emotions. And you chuckle when you notice the jokes slipped into the script, those light one-liners he drops between applause lines, like a vaudeville performer keeping the mood buoyant. There's comedy, too, though sometimes unintended. Stagehands struggle with spotlights, audio techs fuss with microphones, and Trump waves them off, declaring, "Make it louder," as though he's still in that phantom casino ballroom. You picture the Broadway technician again, muttering under his breath, "Boss, this isn't a musical." But you know better. It is a musical, only dressed in red, white, and blue. Mainstream fact anchors this scene. Trump's 2016 rallies regularly drew crowds larger than many concert tours, with attendance rivaling stadium rock shows. When you imagine the logistics, the buses, the stages, the light rigs, you see a touring company in all but name. You feel yourself caught in the current, chanting, clapping, riding the wave of spectacle. How would you resist if you were there, swept into rhythm like an audience carried by an overture? And yet, you sense fragility. Theatricality can amplify, but it can also distort. You wonder, if every rally is a stage, where does the performer end and the person begin? Historians still debate whether Trump's reliance on spectacle was strategic genius or dangerous indulgence. You stand in the back row, considering the weight of that question. Imagine him on the campaign plane afterward, slumped in a leather seat, tie loosened. The roar has faded, the spotlight is gone, but the hum of a show tune still lingers under his breath. Would you feel relief then, or emptiness? If you were the man whose life has become perpetual theater, how would you cope when the curtain finally drops? The callbacks continue. You remember his obsession with lighting, the fussing over pageant crowns, the way he choreographed boardroom exits. Now it all converges. The rallies are Act 3, the climactic scene where all the lessons from Broadway, casinos, and television fuse into a single performance. There's one last curious twist. The scholars, critics, and journalists, those who analyze every gesture, become unwitting theater reviewers. Some praise the energy, others decry the spectacle, but none can deny the truth. They are all audience members, whether they like it or not. You lean back, imagining the curtain call of history. The lights dim, the music softens, and the performer bows, maybe triumphant, maybe weary, maybe already plotting the next show. And you whisper to yourself, you've just witnessed a secret history, where the golden towers of business, the glittering crowns of pageantry, and the roaring arenas of politics are all stages in the same sprawling play. As the final echoes of the orchestra fade, you sit in the quiet, and look back over the lessons this peculiar journey offers. First, you've learned that spectacle is not frivolous. It is a tool. Trump's hidden devotion to Broadway teaches you that understanding rhythm, lighting, and timing can transform even the dullest boardroom into a stage. In your own life, maybe it's not about spotlights, but about knowing when to pause in a presentation, when to let silence work as power. Second, you've seen that failure can be rewritten like Act Two. The bankrupt casinos were ruins to some, but to him they were scenes to be restaged. That teaches you resilience. When your own projects falter, you can rewrite, redesign, and try again, instead of closing the curtain. Third, you felt the force of community, the way music and shared applause bind people. From pageants to rallies, Trump wielded collective energy like a conductor. And you too can recognize how much stronger your projects become when you invite others to clap along, to join the chorus, instead of standing in silence. Fourth, there's the warning: the performer can be consumed by performance. The line between self and stage grows thin. Apply this lesson carefully. Use theater's tools, but do not lose yourself to the mask. Hold on to the real you behind the curtain. Finally, you understand the secret history of success is rarely about numbers alone. It's about the melodies that stir us, the lights that guide us, and the courage to step forward when the curtain rises. Carry these lessons into your own life. Walk with rhythm. Embrace failure as rehearsal. Gather your audience with kindness, and never forget who you are beneath the applause. End of script. Good luck to you.